Valecia, oh, thank you for recording. Valecia has agreed to run through the post-event process. We've been receiving a lot of questions on it lately from chief referees. The last time we did it was probably earlier this year or maybe even last year, and some of the process has changed on that. So she's going to go through and do a live demo on that. Trish Black will be talking about a few IT updates that are happening, as well as some metrics around rider days. And then I'll jump into some updates from my side. We'll talk about some of the 2022 initiatives that I have planned. Hopefully we'll get through them all. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of the session. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Valecia to do a demo. And Valecia, you should be able to just let me stop sharing. You should be able to grab it and take possession of it.
Is
it not allowing you?
No, ma'am. It says host disabled, participant share screen.
Try now, Faith. That should have been fixed.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to briefly run through how to access our post-event page to try and clear up some confusion. So when you log into your USAC account, you want to click on permitting here at the very top. Once you click on the permitting tab, you're going to go to event management. If you are assigned as a chief ref to an event, the events that you're assigned as the chief ref to will display on this page. You will just click on an event, scroll down over to the right side midways, and you'll see the post-event tab. Remember, the post-event tab will not be available until the day after the event takes place. Let me go back really quick because I want to go to one that's in post-event so I can kind of show you what it's going to look like. So you'll get a page here where you'll be able to enter all the information for the post event that you're working on. Remember, if the event is eligible for the discount, it will not show up automatically. You'll just need to email me, and then I'll go and apply the discount, and then I'll respond back to you and the race director, letting you know that the discount has been applied and they're able to go in and make payment. Also, on first occurrence reports, you can certainly upload them to the page here with the event release if you have it. If you do not, that's fine. If the event is on Bike Reg, we can certainly pull those. But if they're not using Bike Reg, please make sure you work with the race director to get that event release form to me so you can submit along with the first occurrence report. Does anyone have any questions?
We have one question. How will we know if we are eligible in the first place to access this form?
So when you're completing the post-event report, you have access to click on the link for the flyer. The chief ref can go through and just see what those incentives are. That button is here. So post-event is here. Click on free event. You'll see the event incentives, and you just can look here. As long as you have 4 of the 7, then the event does qualify for the event.
And I think what we'll do, V, is I don't know if why don't you scroll down to that page again. So what we did, and we talked about this previously, what we've done with the races this year is if they do certain things, which is what we call incentives, then these same check boxes you see are in the permit that the organizer fills out. What we're looking to do is have people do things like junior races, women's races, new racer clinics. And if they do 4 of the 7 of these, they get a lower price on their insurance. So it goes from, I believe it's $5 to $4.70. So we're incentivizing them to do good things by the sport. We're still working with IT to get that part automated. So what will happen here is if they click 4 of these, then it will automatically apply that discount. That is not the case right now. So if you do go in and see this, just drop in, and there's 4 or more filled in, just drop me a note and we can go in, or event services at usacycling.org. Just go in and we can manually apply that discount, and we'll let everybody know when that is completed. And Tom, you want to go through the rest of the questions? You want me to, would be?
Dealer's choice on that one.
All right, I'll walk through, and Trish may want to jump in. So Trish, I'm going to cue this to you. How does one assign a chief ref to the event and the system? And then Steve asked in regards to how can they assign themselves a CR? You want to cover that?
Trish.
Sure. Hello, everyone. And we were going to kind of touch on the chief referee component a little later in the presentation, but we can cover that now. Valecia still needs to assign the chief referees. So what you're doing now is emailing her and letting her know who the chief referee is, and she'll assign the chief. And once the chief is assigned on the permit, they then have access to the post-event form, as does the race director. So those are going to be the only 2 people other than admin at USA Cycling who can access that post-event to answer the questions and to fill in the information.
And another question, Trish, you or Valecia, and I can answer a couple of these, but in regards to when is that available? I believe it's on event day or later. Is that correct? Or is it the day after?
The link will be available the day after the event takes place.
Okay.
So if it's a 2-day event, then it'll be available on the 2nd day of the event.
Okay. The Art asked about occurrence reports filled online. You can't fill it out using this form, but on the officials page, we do have a fillable, totally electronic PDF form. So you should have, a blank copy of that on my laptop's what I keep, or you can download from the website. You can fill that in completely electronically, sign it electronically, and there's an upload location for that in post event to upload that info. And it's just uploading a PDF. So Zach asked, how will this work with events or a series with multiple days and multiple chief refs? Valecia, you cover that?
Yep. You just send me those officials for each day, and then I will go in and update that information. So what will happen, I can assign multiple chief refs at the same time, but we'll need the first official to complete their day before the second official will have access to enter their information.
Okay, and I'm going to hold off on this until Trish presents, but we might be getting a little ahead, Trish. I think we're going to talk about future state. I already talked a little bit about the post-event, the incentives and where we're going with that. And basically the permissions for all of this is going to be changing in the future to allow different editing and assigning capabilities.
That's correct.
Okay. And can you see the regular chat window, Trish? There's a couple, like Dave had a question about last minute event permitting or getting the info late.
Yeah, we'll cover that. We're doing our best right now to alert the officials assigner when a new permit is started. And the way I do that is I assign the assigner as the chief referee on the permit. they then receive an email alert telling them that they've been assigned as the chief referee. So that's our way of notifying the assigners that there is an event that they need to go out and get a crew for. And it seems like we've maybe deteriorated over time, in that the LAs aren't necessarily aware of their calendars and what's happening. Some LAs are better than others. And so we're trying to help that along a little bit by alerting the assigners when there's a permit.
And as I recall, Trish, we requested from the LAs last month. If you all aren't getting this, we've requested the assigners from all of the LAs. This will be built into a table in our IT system, where basically we can go in and edit it eventually, but it will automate this next year. And I don't want to get ahead of Trish's presentation, so I'll shut up at that point. All right, why don't we hold questions for now, and then I told you I'd be handling chat, so I'm going to turn it back to Bonnie, and Trish is going to go through and cover some more of this with IT, and we can redress any questions at that point.
Where did it go? All right, correct view?
Correct view.
Okay. All right, so as we mentioned earlier, Trish is going to talk a little bit about some updates to IT and as well as some metrics as it ties to rider days for you guys.
So Bonnie, you can probably click through all of these together because I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into the details of these, but I wanted you all to be aware that we have addressed and fixed quite a few bugs in the permit system. I realize that it's been a challenge for all of us inside and outside, and we have addressed all of these bugs. They are, the permit system is working much better now. If you go to the next slide, Bonnie, it talks about some of the things that we're going to do in the future. And this is one of the functionalities that got pushed out to January just because we had to prioritize what we could do now. As Chuck mentioned, we're building that table of what the LA territories are, and then a table of who the assigners are and who should be alerted. And the functionality will happen automatically, where when a permit is started, you will get an email saying there's a permit in your area. That will be tested in January and rolled out sometime in January. And in the meantime, the workaround that we're doing is what I just explained about assigning the assigner as the chief referee on the permit so that you're alerted now. And then Bonnie asked me to cover just a few metrics, and this is just to give you kind of a view of what's been happening this year with event and rider days. I presented this information yesterday to the LAs, and this graph is just a cumulative rider day count of 2019, this year, and then last year. Of course, last year is the orange line on the bottom. 2019 is the blue line on the top. So you can see where this year we've done remarkably well. We've had some weeks that have beat 2019 weeks, but on average, we're about 3,700 rider days per week behind the 2019 data. So it's not bad, it's not unexpected, and we are somewhat keeping pace with 2019. Bonnie, if you go to the next slide, it shows rider discipline or rider counts by discipline by LA. And this is, I'll just let you look at it. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than they're ranked from left to right. So road clearly has the most rider days, then mountain biking, fun rides, gravel, Grand Fondos, cross. this is through Q3, the end of September. So I fully expect cross to move up in those rankings over behind mountain biking, because there's been a lot of cross races that have happened just this month in October, and they'll continue into November and December. So this ranks top to bottom with LAs, and then left to right with rider counts by discipline. And I
Okay,
think that's it, right, Bonnie? Okay, yeah.
yeah. Thank you, Trish. So I'm just going to go into some of my updates for everyone. Feel free to ask questions as you have been. I'll pause a little bit to see if there's anything, and don't forget, we will have a question and answer at the end if we need it. So talking a little bit about the officials memberships or our license renewals. So no change in pricing going into 2022. And just a reminder that they are on a rolling 12-month cycle. So if you renew in March of 2022, it will carry you until March of 2023. The only exception for that is the ICs, and theirs are still on a calendar year, and they're well aware of that. The other thing I wanted to touch on, I've had a bunch of questions since I started in this role about requirements and officials unsure as to why their license are showing an appended state. So every year, just as a reminder, when you renew your license, you will have a safe sport refresher that you will be required to take. And until you take that, your license is going to be pended. A criminal background check is done every other year, same thing there. So if you're due for that, until we receive that information that you're clear, then it'll stay pended. And then for the motor referees, the MVR is every other year as well. So the one issue that we have is our system that you do the safe sport training on is not directly tied into our system. It used to be, we used to receive those notifications when you completed that, and the updates would happen automatically. And somewhere along the line that has been broken. So I will ask, and anybody that's been emailing me, I've been letting them know this as well. When you do renew and you do your safe sport, please go ahead and send the certificate from your safe sport completion. If you would email that to officials@usacycling.org, we will get that taken care of on your license, and you should be good to go. And that also gives us an indication that you've renewed, and if there's anything else that you're waiting on, we can remind you at that time. Okay, so one of the things we are getting ready to kick off again is our Official of the Year program. We try to do this every year and take nominations for outstanding officials in the past year. Last year, we kind of sat down, we had a small working group, and we revisited the process for how we do that. In the past, it was kind of non-transparent. It was just all of a sudden, hey, somebody was named Official of the Year. So last year we decided to open that up a little bit, and we're allowing all of the officials and the stakeholders to have a say or a vote, if you will, on who they think is deserving of this title. So Michael Donovan, who's a member of our National Technical Commission, he was on the committee last year. He will be chairing this group again this year. So we are looking to add a couple of people to that. We are hopeful that some of our folks from last year will stay on, and we'll add either probably 2 or 3 more, depending on how many people we need. We're looking at maybe 5 to 7 tops, because once you get bigger than that, then the group gets a little hard to control. So looking for a small group. We're going to ask them to go back and look at the criteria that we created last year, review that, see where the problems were, if there were any bottlenecks, and then also get that process ready to roll out. I'm not 100% sure how we will be collecting that. I assume we'll go back through and do a Google form like we did last year. It seemed to work really well. But you will be getting, you'll get an email when it's time to do that. And hopefully everybody will be able to just go in and nominate someone in their area that's done a great job. The one thing I would caution you on, and the thing that we're going to try to do better this year when we send out the form for nominations, is last year we got quite a few nominations, which was great. But the problem is the details behind why they were being nominated were kind of lacking. So we had one that came in last year that was like a really great example of what we were kind of looking for. So we're going to provide that information to you guys when we send out the process for nomination. So that should get started. When I say the nomination will get started probably in November, the group is going to hopefully get started next week on this if we have interest. So if there's anybody on the call that would like to be a part of this group, or anybody from last year that would like to continue, again, please send your interest to officials@usacycling.org, and then we'll reach out to you. Okay, this is always a good topic for discussion, which is the 2022 assignments for next year. These are the national level appointments that we make. We had initially planned this for the beginning of November 1st, but we've had a little bit of, we had something come up in our schedule that we needed to just hold on this for a little bit until we get our final national calendar put together. Our road nationals are pretty much set. Our mountain bike nationals are pretty much set. I think there's a few outstanding items on track, but we hope to be able to roll out the call for requests by the 15th, if not sooner. And again, that will be any of the national level road events, the pro cross mountain bike events, and the track stuff, and downhill also. We will email out about this, and I know that there's probably people on this call that receive notification for this webinar multiple times. So we're just trying to make sure that everybody receives the information. When we sent out the initial communication for the webinar, there were some people just within our own office who didn't receive it. So that's why we went around and did just a straight email to try to reach everybody. So we'll do the same thing to get this information out. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link on our officials page on our website. So it'll be usacycling.org/officials, and it'll be under the announcements section. So if you're not getting the email, or you're not sure if the email went out, if you would check that link of our website, there'll be something right at the very top of that for 2022 assignment requests, and it'll probably have a link to the form that we'll be using. So that's a good way to make sure that you're not missing out on anything. We will use Google Forms again this year to collect that interest, and the timeline for assignments. So we send this out. If we gave people 30 days, some people would take 30 days. If we gave you a week, some people would take a full week. So I'm just gonna tell you right now, the turnaround is gonna be quick. We're gonna make it a 1-week turnaround on getting your request back into us or submitted. Because where we go from that is we make the preliminary assignments. And don't forget, we've got road, mountain bike, and track to look at. So we'll make the preliminary assignments, and then we always send that preliminary crew to the race directors of each event and give them the option to provide comment and feedback on who's been assigned to their event. And most of the times there's not an issue, but we do like to have that transparency with them so that they can see who we're thinking of. And if there's, for any reason, a situation where they absolutely do not want somebody assigned to their event, we want to make sure we know that in advance, as opposed to after we've already made the assignments. So we usually,
Sorry,
yes.
Bonnie, got a couple questions.
Okay.
Probably want to hit these before you move on. Consideration for canceled events from this year for next year's assignments.
We will take that under consideration. We expect next year that we'll have a full calendar of events. So I won't guarantee that if you were assigned to an event that was canceled this year, that you'll get that same assignment back for next year, but we will take that into consideration.
Right. I've got a couple others that can wait, non-assignment stuff.
Okay. So the race directors, will give them probably 3 days to review. They're usually pretty good about getting things back. And then our goal is to get your assignment letters out to you in December. we may not have the full crew assigned by the end of December, so you won't see the whole crew, but at least you'll know what you've been considered for, and you'll be able to accept or decline at that point. Okay, a couple of miscellaneous items just to touch on. So we are trying to do another rule book update by the end of December. And with you guys being the boots on the ground, if you will, you've probably come across either people, talking to you about rules or suggesting changes that might be valid, or maybe in your situation, you've looked at some of these rules and it's just not working for you. So if you have any suggestions on rule changes, I'd be happy to review them. I'm trying to collect all of those by November 5th, which is next Friday. So if you'd like to submit something to me, please do that. The only thing I ask is that when you make your submission, don't just say like rule ABC shouldn't be there or it should be changed. What I'd like you to do is quote the regulation as it reads, then apply what changes you think need to be made, and then your reasoning behind the change. A lot of the times, if we have the reasoning, it helps us to talk through that. And then what we do is we take all of that information combined with all the other rule changes we've received. And when we send those out to the committees and to our staff and to some of the other stakeholders, it allows them to understand how the rule reads, what we're suggesting from an update perspective, and then what the reasoning is behind it. So sometimes it gives that clarity, since we can't bring everybody that submitted a rule change into the same room to discuss it. So the more information you can give us, the better. And again, if you could have those to me, and you can send those directly to my email by the end of by November 5th, that would be great. The other thing I wanted to just touch on a little bit is discipline. So whatever it is in 2021, I don't know if it's in the water, the wind, or what it is, but we have had a hellacious year of dealing with disciplinary actions. I think maybe with all the riders being, most of them not racing in 2020 and then coming back into 2021, everybody's just been full of steam and ready to go. So there's been a lot of, I will just call it excitement. There's a lot of things that have been happening at the races. We've received a lot of complaints from chief referees, bystanders, other riders to look into certain issues. So I kind of just wanted to talk through some of this stuff for you in regards to what you have the ability to do on site. So most of the stuff ties to a racing incident, something that's happened during the event, right after the event, or right before the race started. If it's something that you can handle on site between a rider, multiple riders, whatever it may be, as the chief referee, that's really your responsibility to handle. So, things like relegations and disqualifications, that should all be handled on site. It shouldn't be that coming to us to deal with, or riders bringing those issues to us. We've been trying to do some education, as well as a lot of riders are bringing those type of things to our attention when it really should have been handled on site. So I'm not saying it's partially officials that need to be more proactive in handling these. And it's also some of the riders that need to be more proactive in what they should be doing when there's a problem. Any sort of thing that's what we would consider a field of play decision. So anything that you can handle. If there's a problem in a sprint and you need to relegate somebody, you do it. You have our full support on that. Or if it's something that warranted disqualification, we are not going to go against what you said. We are going to fully support what you have. We may question you individually about something that was done, just to get a better understanding on our side, so that we can respond to the rider that's reaching out to us. But really, field of play decisions are yours to make, and we appreciate when you do that. So you might want to know, like, when should you file a formal complaint? Well, obviously, from a chief referee's perspective, you don't have the ability to issue a suspension. So anything that has happened during the race that may warrant a possible suspension, those are definitely things that come into us to look at. If you have something like fighting amongst riders that you can't, I guess, mediate or unfuse on the spot and dismiss and handle it, then that stuff needs to come to us as well. When the complaints come in, it does take a significant amount of time, and we're happy to do it. But it involves a lot of people. So we review the complaint, and sometimes we get multiple complaints on the same issue. But we'll review the complaint, and if it warrants further investigation, then we go ahead and we sign an investigator to look at that. And an investigator can be somebody that's most of the time is going to be like an upper level official, maybe from a Cat A or higher, who we value. We think they have a good handle on the regulations, and we'll assign them to look into some of these issues. So they'll essentially receive the complaint. They'll know who it's about. They'll schedule interviews, and they'll talk to everybody that's involved. And then they'll come back with a decision that they've made. And at that point, from a USA Cycling perspective, we will review that decision on what they came back with. And then we'll move forward with either their recommendation for discipline, or if we're not quite in agreement, we may go back and forth a little bit on that. More times than not, we're going to take your recommendation. But I just kind of wanted to touch on that, because I'm not sure that everybody really realizes, like, at what point do they file a formal complaint. A lot of the riders have been filing complaints through Safe Sport, which really just gets sent to us to review in the technical department. Most of the officials are just sending things to us directly, which is exactly what you should be doing. So thank you for doing that. And then the other thing on situations that you're going to file a complaint on, it should be coming from the chief referee. That's usually when we'll look to opening an investigation once we have the chief referee's complaint. And I know that some of you probably on the call, I've reached out to you this fall on situations where we had complaints where we hadn't heard from you. So some of these things may happen without your knowledge, but more times than not, you're aware that there was some sort of situation during the event that occurred. Anyway, does anybody have any questions on, like, the discipline procedure or process in regards to filing complaints?
Bonnie, I had a chat here. I've got the link. I just need to copy and paste it. We've got 2 online forms, something we call Asana, and it is what you should do. And I believe this is linked from post-event. If not, we'll look at that, and I'll make sure these links are on the officials page. One is for rider reporting and fine submission, and another is for request for suspension. And those are, I'll drop those in chat here in a minute. We'll make sure they're up. Robert asked, how do we document serial offenders? The first thing to do is to send those forms in to us so that we can get that. And Chris asked if we could see those, or if an official could see those. We do have the ability to put notes in someone's member account, and that's how we've generally handled this. That functionality, the old tool quit working as we moved over, but it's something we can see, and we've got it in the scope of projects in the future to do this. But number one is make sure we get that rider reporting in so we can annotate it. The request for suspension is a separate item. It is covered in the discipline section of the rule book. And I'll just handle some other things. Missy asked, how should we handle complaints that come to us through Facebook? The suspension that should come from an official will be a on-site event day that meets the requirements in that table in the rule book, as suspension is one of the different items in there. Some stuff was left out last year. We fixed that going into this year. So just become familiar with that. For instance, an assault against another rider, hitting another rider, is something that is suspendable, and that's where we need to get a report from the chief referee in order to move forward. Things that are on Facebook, I think you can send to us. We generally see a lot of stuff on social media. We can start an investigation as USA Cycling per policy, but it puts us in a bit of a bind if there was a serious incident at an event and we didn't get anything from the chief referee. And sometimes they may not have known about it, and that's certainly fair. So, Bonnie, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, I really just kind of wanted to touch on it. And then if anybody, if you're unsure, I mean, always reach out and we can give you some guidance as to what we think, how you should proceed with it. But yeah, if there's something that happens, like Chuck said, that's in chapter 8, that it results in a suspension, those are definitely things that need to come into us directly.
Yeah, another one, another question about suspension. There's a couple others, Matt and Cindy both have other questions we'll get to, so I'm not ignoring you. Question about themes on the discipline we're seeing, and possibly like what are we seeing that's causing the rise right now? And personally, I think it's people are just maladjusted after COVID. But and then give us an example of something that a complaint or dispute that should have been resolved by the CR. And I am going to add in before Bonnie takes over. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes the chief referee will resolve something with a relegation or a disqualification and then send it also for suspension. But Bonnie, what are you seeing on that front since you've?
Yeah, I think what I've seen so far is there's situations that are happening during the race, and the chief referee may be aware of it, but I should say they're aware of it simply because one of the riders came to them about it, but then there was no official that witnessed the issue. And so I think at that time, they're kind of afraid to make a call on it. And my recommendation in those situations would be to pull some of the riders together. I mean, there's riders that are witnessing this stuff out there, and talk to the riders that were in that race and see what you can find out. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean we can't act on it. I've also seen things where it could be, a fan on the side at the finish was using an iPhone to video something, and the officials may or may not have seen any issue. And so, they've brought something to the officials, and the officials have said, I can't look at that. That's not part of our stuff. Well, you can always look at it. And I would recommend that you do, because at least it's showing compassion and that you want to hear what they have to say. You can look at what they have and use it for what it's worth. I mean, that doesn't mean you have to act on it, but it is something that happened, and they do have some sort of proof about it. It may not be the perfect angle to see exactly what they're claiming. It may look more like it's benefiting them than the other rider, but at least take that opportunity to show, as the official of the event, you're willing to listen to them, see what they have to say, and then you make an educated decision based on what you know.
Yeah, and to reiterate what Bonnie said, you can use any tool at your disposal to make the right decision in a bike race. A couple other questions, Bonnie, that have come up. This is good conversation. Scott posted a video. I didn't watch it, but I get the gist of what it's going to be. And I think this is sort of the Facebook deal. We're in a time now that a lot of the stuff we hear about, you, in fairness to the chiefs on site, you may never hear about. We're sort of in a place and time where people like to resolve stuff on social media. So what will happen is that Monday morning, there will be a video posted that came off someone's GoPro that you as the chief may never have heard about. And we deal with those as we can. If there was an incident in a race, we want to resolve it. We want to resolve it fairly. And that's one where we may come to you and you may have no idea. Give you an example. I mean, Tokyo, the Olympic road race, one of the biggest races in the world, I'm working as a motor commissaire. And in that case, the UCI has they have someone in basically the TV truck, a commissaire watching for incidents out on the course. And after the race, he showed me something that had happened that was moderately minor. It was like an illegal feed. And you could see me on the motor about 10 cars in front of, and I had no idea because it was behind me. So, but we used that tool to issue a fine in that case. So, it's not that I wasn't doing my job, I was just not in the right place at that point. So anyway, just do send that information in. Don't be offended if we come to you and ask questions. It doesn't mean you're a bad official because you missed it. It just means that it may not have been brought to you, or you may not have been in that place. It's just, this wasn't happening 10 years ago, and it is now, and times are changing. Bonnie, another one I'm going to send to you. Are there themes on, let's see, sorry, broader commits an offense that meets criteria of suspension? Can the CR suspend on site and then refer to USAC for adjudication?
So we do have one thing in the rule book that's, if you have an issue with a rider and it's specific, you have the ability to kind of temporary suspend them for 72 hours, which would mean that if it's a multi-day event, then essentially they're not racing the next day. But you don't have the ability to suspend a rider for, say, okay, because you did this, you're going to be suspended for 10 days type thing. So look through the Chapter 8 to understand what those different situations are. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to follow up.
Yeah, and we call that cooling off period. We do have the ability as USA Cycling in the case, very similar to that. There is a process and due process to do this, and I think that's hugely important. And we get a lot of riled up people when there is a very visible incident. I dealt with one a few years ago with one rider crashing another, and the pitchforks and torches come out and suspend them for life. We do have a process and a due process to handle that in fairness to everyone. We do have the ability, if we feel like this is going to cause endangerment to someone, to issue a temporary suspension. You have that same ability for 72 hours. What happens is Friday night at the crit of a 3-day weekend, there's a fight that breaks out between two riders, and the officials have the ability to send both of them home at that point. Just be very careful with that, please, and use good judgment on it, because that's not something you can undo. Right. One way or the other, we'll hear about it Monday morning. So.
Okay.
So a couple of questions, Ryan. I misspoke earlier. We are going to link those two. I thought they were in there. I believe they're built into the post-event form. So I was telling you the wrong thing. They are public facing, and we do get reports in on them. I'll make sure with Bonnie that gets put on that page.
Yeah, I took a note.
Yep. Another one, Bonnie, I'm going to read to you. How do you handle foreign riders in a USA cycling event that is not a UCI recognized event?
Well, if they have a UCI, a true UCI international license, they're eligible to race in our events. If they come, like being in Texas, we have a lot of riders from Mexico that come up and race, but they don't have an international license. They have a Mexican Federation license, which we do not accept.
I think we're talking in terms of discipline.
Well, yeah.
And you're giving good info there too.
Yeah, if they don't have an international license, Chuck, you're going to have to answer that one, because I'm not sure what our relationship is with the other federations.
Yeah, we do have the ability. The UCI does have a disciplinary committee, and the fact is, if you issue a fine to someone, it's probably frankly not worth us chasing the $20 across borders to do it. So just keep that in mind. And there is a process for that in UCI events. Otherwise, it gets very complicated and time consuming. Anything that is a suspendable disciplinary action, we can either go to that foreign federation, or we can go to the UCI disciplinary committee to handle it. We have done that. We had a pretty bad case, not an in-race incident, but another incident a few years ago with a staff member. And that person is no longer in the sport because we went to the UCI with it, and they got a multi-year suspension on it. So they do take that seriously. It does get complicated. I will tell you, if it's resolvable on site is probably the better way to go. But if it is serious enough, absolutely bring it to us, and we can take it forward at that point. So.
Okay.
A couple other messages. Andy was asking about, please answer the Mexican license one-day Cat 3 C1 question. So Bonnie, keep speaking on that. You were giving good info, so I couldn't
Okay.
interrupt you.
Yeah, so generally, they would have to buy a one-day license. And I think on the Mexican license specifically, they have some sort of category system. In my experience, sell them a one-day license and take their word for it. I mean, unless it says novice or like entry-level license or whatever, just let them race. You know, my feeling is just put them where they need to race.
Yeah, one issue with foreign licenses, I mean, the UCI categories, which is required across disciplines for international license, are junior, elite, master, and U23 for road and track and cross. So basically, you can, if you are a US rider with a category 5 or novice license, international license, it says elite on it. It does not mean you're good or bad. It means you are that age group. And this is the toughest thing for us to decide. I mean, I think Great Britain is A, B, and C right now for categories. You sort of, as chief, have to take a judgment call. If there's ever a real concern about whether they have a valid international license or not, put them on a one day. And as a one day, they're covered by medical insurance, they're covered by our liability insurance, and it keeps all of us and the rider, frankly, and the organizer out of trouble. So don't be afraid to do that. Bonnie, we probably need to refurb our FAQ we have on that over the winter, and we'll send that out to you all. Some areas like New York State, I believe, did a document a few years ago, sort of, if you're this in Canada, you should be this in the US, which is super helpful. But every federation is different in regards to their different category systems. So I hope that helped.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to try. I don't have much more to go. And if you have to drop off, you won't hurt my feelings since it took me a while to get on. But the next thing that I was going to talk about is what we're planning from an education perspective for next year. And again, all of these are based on interest. So we won't hold these courses with just 1 or 2 people. We need to have enough to make it worth the while of having the instructor in to do it. So we're planning our category A road course, which will probably be in the April-May timeframe. We're planning another category B road chief ref workshop, if you will. It's the class that Sarah Rodney started a couple of years ago. It's been very well received, and kind of the tail on after you've gone through your Cat B upgrade work and you're ready to start chief reffing events. So that would be the follow-on course for that. We will be doing a virtual Motor C course. Chuck will be teaching it, yay. And if we have enough interest between our US-based officials along with our Canadian friends to the north, we will offer a road ENC course sometime this coming year as well.
Bonnie, a couple questions. One, yep. I'm just going to reiterate something I said earlier. Todd asked about an FA, basically asked a chart for US and Canada. That's what I was referring to. We'll refurb that. I've got a version on my computer. We will update. I'm going to go back again. I think it's taking people a little time to ask these. What if you say UCI licensed rider says they're a Cat 3 equivalent, smokes spilled by a huge margin? A lot of people complain, well, you made the wrong guess, didn't you? So probably make them a 1-2 in the next event. We're not perfect on that. And Chris asked, is there any plans for a cross secretary course?
So Chris, right now we don't have that. We've never done a cross secretary course, like an in-person or virtual class, but I think that's a really good idea, good concept. I think we have some people who would be interested in teaching that. In the past, we've essentially sent out the workbook and some instructions, and then you would send your information back. So let me check on that and see what the ability to do that. I don't think it would end up being this fall, but maybe we could plan something for like next spring or early summer to get some secretaries trained up before we send out for cross assignments, because cross secretaries are definitely something that we're short of and we need more of. So great idea.
And the Next question, Julie. Dave said, or track starter secretary. We did teach one of those a
Mhm.
couple years ago. Julie asked, will the A road course be with more hands-on? Julie asked, I assume you mean more hands-on.
Yeah, so what we've been doing with our A road course for a while now is we usually hold it in conjunction with an event. We've done one at the Redlands Bicycle Classic, which is a stage race, and we've done one at Tour of Utah in the past. And there's course work, and then there's getting the students out in the caravan and experiencing some of that. So that's what we've been trying to do as of lately. So that's what we'd be planning for 2022 as well.
Richard asked, will there be an official B class for track sometime soon?
I tell you what, anybody on this call that has an interest in either one of the classes that's listed or a class that's not listed, send a note to officials@usacycling.org. We do have some, we have been collecting interest, but we don't obviously have everybody's interest accounted for. So if you're interested in something like that, let us know. And if we have enough interest, we'll definitely do that. There's nothing saying that we can't swap some of these courses around. This is just what we were planning to do based on what we had seen in the past. So yeah, absolutely, we can think about that.
All right, Bonnie, I think that's it for education, and I have some other questions built up when we get to that place.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to kind of go through these next few slides just quickly. Again, if you have to drop off, thank you for joining. If you're staying, thank you for that. One of the things we've been hearing from our officials is that they would like to have a little bit more mentoring and possibly bringing the evaluation process back into the mix. So we are going to work on bringing some of that stuff to your local and regional events in 2022. I think, well, depending on how the budget works out, we will have hopefully more than one event that we'll be coming to. So if there's a good event that, like a small stage race or, road races or something where you feel that your area could really use some additional mentoring in, please let me know. Otherwise, we have a few that we like and that we probably would pick, and we think we'd have a good variety of people to look at and mentor at that situation. I'm also planning to do mentoring specific to chief referees in preparation for national championships. One of the things that COVID taught us is that after a year off, not only were the riders kind of crazy when they came back a little bit, but everybody was a little rusty. And that just really showed that we would like to be able to groom our officials a little bit better so that when we assign them as a chief referee for one of our national championships, that they're going in and they're going to be successful. So I have some thoughts around that area. I'm not sure. I don't think I'll do it for every discipline this year, but I think we're looking at probably maybe track and maybe mountain bike to do this at. And we also are planning some track specific mentoring because we know that our track officials are getting to be few and far between. And then evaluations, those are usually something that are done on site, either at a national championship event or at another event that we would show up and do those at. The other thing that I want to put into place is a peer evaluation, which I think is very telling of how people work in a team and how they work with their peers, how prepared they are, how they handled the event that they were at. So those will probably go into effect pretty soon. So if you work an event, don't be surprised if you get an email afterwards saying, hey, could you please evaluate Chuck Hodge? How did he do as a chief judge? Badly. Yeah. So we have those that we're planning for. And then the last two slides I have are just some things to get excited about and congratulate people and wish them good luck on. So we have several virtual ENC classes, which is the Elite National Commissar class, that are going on right now. They're about a 30-day class. I think they started last Monday, and they'll run up until the final exam, which is on November 20th. So this is a lot of self-learning with certain days of the week they have availability to meet with the actual instructors, ask questions. But it is pretty stressful. I mean, just the ENC class in person is hard, and I can't imagine doing this for a month straight. So Chris Clark, congratulations, good luck in the track. We also have Amy Thaler from Illinois, who's doing the mountain bike class. On the road side, Zach Mano out of Washington is doing the road portion. And on the BMX side, Justin Evans and Don Robbins, Don's from Florida, Justin now lives in North Carolina, are doing the BMX side of that. So the one thing I failed to mention is that sometime these on November 20th, when these guys and girls go in to take their tests, some of them are meeting their test is like at 3:30 in the morning or 2 a.m. in the morning. So they have students from all over the world. They picked a time, and it's not very conducive to the people in North America, just saying. So good luck, you guys. If there's anything that we can do to help, please feel to reach out, and we'll provide our support or assistance as needed. And then the last thing is just a little bit on the International Commissaire courses and progress on our new ICs. Jeff Wu has already been through the cyclocross class. He took it a couple of years ago, but due to COVID, his practical assessment was postponed. So he's actually going to be headed to Indianapolis this weekend to do his practical there. So good luck to Jeff. Chris Pease out of New Hampshire completed the track class, and his practical assessment will be scheduled for sometime in 2021's track season. So the track season that's currently going on, the UCI track events. So he should be receiving an assignment to do his assessment soon. And then the last little bit is on the road side, Jeff Wu and John Allen, both out of California, have been accepted into the international road class, which will take place in December in Switzerland. So good luck to everybody. And again, if there's anything that Chuck or I can do or the NTC can do to help, please feel free to reach out to us. All right.
I'm going to start with some questions, and let's do this. If you have a question that you need to verbalize rather than put into chat, if you can do your hand raise thing in the attendees, and I'll unmute you and let you know. But we have, I think, 3 outstanding questions I see. You can use either the chat window or there's a Q&A window. I'm looking at both. So Steve, I'll answer this one. Steve asked, how can we track a Troublemaker rider? I think we answered that probably for you right when you typed it, Steve, is you need to basically use that form to report serious rider discipline. And we have the ability to tag someone's account and see that stuff internally. So feel free to use those forms. And again, we'll put those into the officials resource page. I'm going to answer the second one and turn the rest over to Bonnie. Matt asked, do we have any stance or opinion on the Sacramento crit, the big Sacramento crit this weekend? We have been in discussions with Legion. I actually may have a phone call with them after this. In regards to that event, my understanding is some of our officials are working it, not in USAC officials garb. My opinion is with this type of unsanctioned event, and this is what I'll express to Legion that we've already expressed, is they're using our officials who we've trained or been trained through the system. They're using our regulations. There's not going to be anti-doping. Is there the ability to suspend people? I mean, there's outside of the whole issue with UCI riders doing this, a lot of these events are using our infrastructure, and that is what rider memberships and licenses go to pay. So essentially using our rule book and our officials, even though they're not our officials that day, who may or may not be insured, and really using the infrastructure that our volunteers and our race directors and we have developed, but not contributing back to the system. So I'm just I think you sort of know my opinion of that. Officials aren't going to get in trouble if they do that event. But again, my understanding is like they can't get insurance for the motors right now. A lot of things we've worked and built over the years. The other thing is, and I've talked to a couple of people, is what happens on Monday morning? If there's a fight breaks out, we just spent 15 minutes talking about discipline. There's no infrastructure in place to handle that. There's no anti-doping. There's no ability to suspend. There's no safe sport guarantees. All this stuff we consider to be a bit a pain in the rear is a pain in the rear until it's needed, and then it's not. And the analogy I use is, I'm getting long-winded, but you pay your property taxes and hope you never have to call the fire department and police department. But when your house is on fire, gets broken into, you're really glad that those folks are going to come. And that's a lot of what you do as officials out there. So hopefully, Matt, that was a long-winded version of answering the question. So Bonnie, next question from Richard. Do you have a date yet for the Motor C virtual class? Not December 13th through 21st, I can tell you that. But Rich, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck and I haven't discussed a date. In my mind, I was kind of thinking maybe the March timeframe. I think that would be appropriate for most people in most areas of the country getting ready to race. So it'll just depend on his schedule and when we can get that's for, but we'll work on those dates.
We talked about this summer before Bonnie came on board, and I talked to Justin. I think we had only a couple people show interest. So just make sure you let Bonnie know at officials@usacycling.org. I can do it. We do it via Zoom now, and I can do it anytime. So Missy asked, how can we get an upgrade to Moto B? I know the answer.
So Missy, this one is actually pretty easy, and I think I know the answer too. So really, upgrading to Motor B is more of about an evaluation. So what happens is normally we'll have you at an event. And it doesn't have to be an event that we assign you to. It just has to be at an event where we know we have probably a Motor A available, also work in that event that can work alongside you and watch how you work and interact with the riders. And it's all about evaluation.
Great. Andy Hollinger, I'm answering, he asked about when will we restart testing at local races, i.e. Fort Hood, which is his event. Andy, we do ask for solicitation for events out of the Race Clean program. And due to the situation with Texpro, that's probably not getting through. I just put a response to you in that Q&A with Kelsey Erickson's email. Be sure and email her and request that. And we do have a pretty robust list of local races that we or USADA cover the testing for. So drop Kelsey a note. She's always looking for good events to add to that. So appreciate your interest in that. Sean or Lisa asked about Motor A upgrade, which in fairness to Bonnie, I did not get done with all the million other things, and she has brought up. So you want to give them an answer on that?
Yeah, so, and actually that was one of the things I just kind of cut out since we were short on time, but we are actually looking at revamping our Motor A class. As you guys usually in the past, the Motor A was really about motor referees riding one up who were qualified to work our top and highest events in the US. And that has kind of, not that that has changed a lot, but now those top events, the UCI events, all use 2-ups for motor refereeing. So they'll have a motor comm on the back and a pilot that's driving. So we are looking into our Motor A course as it stands, and we are hoping to modify it to include a portion of that to focus on the motor commissaire themselves. We have Duke Spinelli, who has been asked to take some time and look into this, and I have not actually followed up with Duke yet, Chuck. That's one of the things still on the list that'll get done eventually, but looking at ways that we could maybe change that class and that course around in order to benefit everybody. So it won't just be the motor referees that are riding one up in races, but it'll also include a part for the motor commissaires that are now a big part of that as well.
Great, thanks, Bonnie. And I just put a link in, that's to the tab on the officials resource page in regards to the sort of upgrade path. There was another question about what should be the interest, relaying interest in working on upgrading your license. Is it word of mouth? This is from Chassis. We do have some information on that, but Bonnie, you want to cover more in depth?
Yeah, I think I saw in the chat too about a possibly doing like either a Survey Monkey or a Google form to kind of collect interest. And I think that came from Dot. I think that's a great idea, Dot. But Chassie, just to answer your question, a lot of it is word of mouth, unfortunately. But I think everybody knows me, everybody knows Chuck, everybody knows Justin. If you just reach out to somebody here and make us aware, we are maintaining a list of the interest that comes in. So it's not just going into a black box. I will let anybody, any of the category C officials, road specific that are, or I should say category C officials who are hoping to upgrade to a Cat B on the road. We do have a new process in place. We've had it for several years now, and it's kind of a self-assessment. It's all workbook based. And if you're interested in getting started on that, just shoot me an email and I can have you set up and ready to go in probably under 10 or 15 minutes when I have the time to get it set up. It's really about self-assessment and knowing what you need to work on and where your skills currently are. And then based on how you progress through that at different events. So that's an easy process for anybody hoping to become a category B.
Right. And I also I put in the link for the general officials upgrade pathway, and also the motor ref, which shows what you need to do to move up. And the A is an in-person, but the C and B are in there. So that should answer those questions for you all. Bonnie, earlier question that came through was from Cindy. Just, we know we had issues with officials categories for a brief shining moment. Everybody was international commissary last year until we fixed that. Can you give us an update on status of officials categories in the system, and also any fixes? I will tell everybody on the rider side of things, it actually wasn't our system that broke. We had a little of that. The bigger issue is a lot of riders went in as they signed up and basically did duplicate accounts. So they had one as like a Cat 2 rider, another as a novice. And we did run some scripts months ago and fixed a lot of those. But you want to address the official side, and Sean Farrell said he's dropped to a C. I'm sure he didn't tell us because it's cheaper. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I'm not 100% sure that that's resolved, Chuck, because that was one of the things I updated on my own license probably a couple weeks ago, is updating my categories to be correct.
I'm sorry, I want to get back. We ran a script to resolve rider licenses. That is not nearly as easy to do for our officials license. And that is, Justin is basically probably talked to a lot of people. We've manually done that, so a lot of stuff is fixed. So Bonnie, is it safe to say if someone goes on their account and sees an issue to email the officials email?
Yeah, email the officials. I fixed a couple, like Dot, I fixed your license this week, which had 2 officials licensed, both with different discipline categories on them. So we got that resolved, and I will follow up with IT on that particular thing. I'm hopeful that when our new membership stuff rolls out, that we'll have solid data, but I'll just ask that question. And so I'll have a good answer. But yeah, until then, if you've got problems, just email.
And this is as much a pain in the rear for us as it is for all of you. I know everybody's heard this before, as have I, but we no longer have the IT director we had 2 months ago. We do have a consultant in helping us now, and he is actually a guy who came to us and is a member who has put on races. He's a customer, and he definitely gets these pain points. So we've actually seen, as Trish told you guys, pretty rapid responses to stuff. We got a long way to go on it, so I'm not going to make any promises.
Yeah.
And I'm looking else. Chassis, if you want to email Bonnie on your particular needs, that would probably be best thing, or the officials. And another question came about upgrades for riders. I think I'll answer this one. Is So we have an upgrade policy that is a mandatory upgrade after a certain number of points. In transparency, USA Cycling has never had an automated system to go in and automatically upgrade people who reach the maximum amount of points. Several of the local associations have done that, BRAC being an example. What we do always get is they get basically ratted out by someone else, which we're seeing in the cyclocross world. Trish, you want to comment on that at all, and anything that will help you alleviate that issue? And we do have some future plans to address that, but it is not going to be very workable with our current upgrade policy due to the algorithms and logistics. It'll probably be something we look at if we change that policy in the coming years.
Yeah, I'll just say that if you do have grades or riders that you think to be upgraded mandatory criteria, send those to event services at usacycling.com, and we do look at those. We look at quite a few of them. We get them from, as Chuck said, from LAs, from riders, from other officials, and we do what we can with them. We'll look at the criteria, we'll upgrade them, and then notify the rider.
All right, so I think we've cleared out all the Q&A. Bonnie technically only went 4 minutes over after the
after we got started. All right. Well, if you guys think of anything that you wanted to ask and you forgot, just please send it on. And that officials at usacycling.org is a really great way. It opens a ticket for us and we track it regularly. So it's easy to not get lost in email, my email, I guess. So thanks for everybody for joining. Really appreciate your time. And again, apologize for the delays at the beginning. Hopefully you found some stuff worth it for sticking around. Have a great evening.